One of the most striking features of Israel's ongoing genocide in Gaza is just how unsubtle its perpetrators have been. They've not sought to cover up their intent. They have loudly and proudly boasted to the world their intent, leaving no room for misinterpretation. From the Prime Minister to his government, other politicians to army officers, media outlets to journalists, to, yes, soldiers on the ground. Now, a loud message has been broadcast to the world, which we have heard, that the Israeli state and much of society in the grip of genocidal mania believes that Palestinians collectively are a problem as far as they're concerned. Their very existence a problem. This mentality underpins Israel's military onslaught against and indeed the siege of Gaza. Now, here is one example I'm going to just show you, which, I will say it should be shocking. It's really important to always be shocked. All the way through this horror, I try to say on a daily basis, never stop being shocked. Never treat this as normal. Always feel that horror that this is actually happening. Never let that go away. So this example, an Israeli soldier named Dehumanization, he tweeted the following. Brace yourself. We left Gaza after 2 months of being in reserve. The heat was unbearable and the feeling is that we could have done more. The destruction that exists in Gaza gives me a good feeling. Gaza is in a state of destruction. Lots of buildings that no longer exist in the landscape. The machine of destruction must continue to work so that it is clear that they have nowhere to return. Despair as a work plan. Accompanying this tweet was a video of that total destruction of Gaza. It's difficult, isn't it, to find the words? It's difficult. Such a sick, twisted thing to write. Full of sadism, relishing in cruelty, relishing in human suffering, relishing in the horror being inflicted on other human beings. He doesn't see them as humans, that's the problem. What he wrote should be regarded as a confession of grave war crimes. The words themselves are reminiscent, of course, of the sorts of words which have always accompanied the worst atrocities committed in human history. He relishes the total destruction of Gaza and the suffering of its people. He makes it clear that there was a deliberate mass destruction of civilian infrastructure and that this mass destruction should continue so that the Palestinian people can no longer live in Gaza. Despair as a work plan, as he puts it. The words are indicative of the total dehumanization of the Palestinian people. There is no pretense there that he considers Palestinians to be humans with lives of any worth. Indeed, here is an example of genocidal mentality, which believes that the civilian population, the Palestinian people, must either leave or be killed. Now, to be clear, this guy is not some random Israeli soldier. It's really important to just make that very clear. He's the former editor at Israel's Channel 14 news channel, which is extremely close to the government, and a spokesperson of Avihai Buran, an Israeli politician who belongs to the ruling Likud party, of which, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is leader and prime minister. As one brilliant Israeli activist, Nadav Feinberg, put it, "Thanks for posting the video. Take into account that we have documented you with your full name. Everything is published and will reach the hands of the international law authorities. If I were you, I would start dreading getting on a flight. Indeed, please do circulate the name of Dehumanization. Don't forget it. Let's make an example. Let's get that name out there. Let's make sure that if he ever touches the ground of whatever country you're in, he is arrested." We brought this example to the attention of Tayyab Ali, a solicitor belonging to the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians, who is leading legal attempts to prosecute politicians, but also, for example, soldiers who commit war crimes. Now, there are so many examples, I realise, of these soldiers, indeed IDF soldiers, who have variously used TikTok and Twitter to boast about and publicise their war crimes. This is because of impunity and not irrational belief that the Israeli state can do exactly what it wants with no consequences. Well, I firmly believe that impunity is falling apart in real time. There was another response, however, from a purported Israeli peace activist. I won't name and shame him, but it depressed me almost as much as the original tweet. He wrote in response to the sickening diatribe, "Desperation is the most dangerous weapons that Hamas has." Desperation is the most dangerous weapon that Hamas has. That was his response to that. I mean, my response is, are you serious? Is this really an appropriate response to confessions of war crimes, of genocidal mentality, of relishing in suffering, mass destruction, death? that your chosen criteria about whether this is good or bad is whether or not it will bolster the hated enemy. Well, let's be clear. There was no question Hamas committed war crimes on the 7th of October. I've always been clear about that. Let me also be clear. The war crimes of Israel are much, much, much worse, much graver, much more obscene. I mean, anyone who denies that is an atrocity denier. You are denying the mass slaughter of tens of thousands of people and the heinous crimes committed against Palestinians every single day. Arguing from a position of moral superiority after all of that, what do you even say? Is that really the hill you're going to die on? But there's no acceptance. There's no acceptance of the humanity of the Palestinian people from this, a supposed Israeli progressive. None at all. That's what's depressing. When I said it wasn't appropriate to him, he responded, it's not what's appropriate, inappropriate. It's about where that has the potential to be effective. Doesn't look like your strategy's working very well, mate, does it? If accepting dehumanization as a premise is your strategy, doesn't seem to have worked. Your fellow citizens are currently rioting in the streets in support of rape. That's where we're currently at. That's the biggest unrest we've seen by Israeli citizens since this began is not against genocide. It's against an attempt to stop, as I'll mention further, soldiers raping Palestinians. I mean, if even opponents of this onslaught are willing to go along with ensuring there's no discussion of the humanity of those being butchered by the tens of thousands, what is the point? Now, it's notable, as I've said, there were riots this week after a Palestinian detainee was gang raped, and there was an attempt to arrest the soldiers responsible, even though there has been mass torture and abuse and rape of Palestinians for months and months and months, indeed, long predating 7th October. So citizens rioted, including government ministers, in support of the right to rape Palestinian detainees. Why the sudden attempt at an arrest? Now, it is notable that one of the soldiers suspected of this torture said his interrogation by the military police was a sham. He said, you feel they want to thank you. There were days when they applauded us. Yeah, good independent judiciary there. A good clue was offered by an Israeli doctor who treated the tortured Palestinian detainee, which sparked all of this. He said, firstly, if the state and Knesset members think there's no limit to how much you can abuse prisoners, they should kill themselves like the Nazis did. Oof, punchy. But he also said, if they maintain a hospital only for the sake of defending ourselves at the International Criminal Court of The Hague, that's no good. That's important. That is important. What's he saying there? Well, the point here is the ICC's mandate is based on what's called complementarity, that it will only intervene and issue arrest warrants if it believes the judicial system of the country in question won't have its own credible investigations. So the Israeli state is engaged in this absurd sham to stop further requests for charges being issued by the ICC. They haven't issued charges yet related to torture, but they should do. And these war crimes and the boasting of these war crimes by IDF soldiers is endless. It's a really important point. Here's a video of the IDF blowing up the water reservoir serving Rafah with the music attached by them as they posted it to social media.
יורים ובוכים, אתם כמו מקקים, אז עכשיו אל תבכו כשבאים מדבירים, מורידים בניינים, מפנים אזרחים, כי הנובה הבא אצלכם בשטחים, כל אחד שיקפוץ נרים אל השחקים, על אחד מאיתנו נוריד אלפים, מה חשבתם יקרה לא נבוא מוכנים וחבל שרק ככה אתם מבינים שם תחת שנס תבינו את המסר כל בית שהחרבתם נחריב לכם מסר מזרח התיכון מתימן עד המסק עינן זה הזמן שנסגור כבר את העסק עזה הורסק נמאס כבר קוסמק פתחתם את הפה אז הבאנו את הרסן נשכח או נסלח יאללה צאו מהסרט פתרון היחיד ש...
Now, the 1948 Genocide Convention includes in its definition of genocide deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Blowing up water supplies to civilians, but I think that more than qualifies. Some of the worst atrocities it's possible to be committed against human beings. That's what we're witnessing. Backed and legitimised by governments. It's a really important point. This has all been directly facilitated by these people, by our governments, our rulers. Never let them off the hook. The blood is on their hands as well as those of Israel's rulers. Never forget that. Please like and subscribe. Do leave your thoughts and comments. Keep the show on the road at patreon.com/Andreas84. Listen to us, the podcast. I'll speak to you soon.